Perfect. So I think we might get started since everybody's here. We do have a small group tonight, just two from Dorset and then my co-worker on the line as well. So I think that we might make this a pretty interactive session. If you guys want to engage at any stage, feel free to just jump in, either unmute yourself or put a message in the chat, and I'll try and monitor that throughout. Yeah, we'll do that. So thank you for coming and taking the time to attend tonight's workshop. My name is Shay Collis and I am the Senior Community Development Officer for Good Sports and the Relationship Manager for clubs in the Northern, Northwest and the Dorset Council area. So the hope for tonight's session is for you to leave with a bit of a better understanding about mental health, how to protect, develop and maintain the mental health of your club members, where you can access expert local support if and when required, and the role that your club can play in promoting mental health and wellbeing to all members, and finally, how you can create a supportive environment at your club. So I will acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all meeting from our various phones and computers here, which is the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, and I will pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as paying my respects to any Aboriginal people who might be in the meeting tonight, and also paying respects to anybody who might be experiencing a mental health episode or illness right now. Just a bit of a backstory about Good Sports. So Good Sports is Australia's largest and longest running health initiative in community sports, and we've been working with local sporting clubs for over 2 decades, helping clubs in being inspired to be their best. Through our core program, we have a 3-level accreditation program, which is supporting clubs to change around responsible alcohol management, safe transportation, and promoting smoke-free club environments. We also offer other programs, including mental health, healthy eating, junior role modelling, and preventing illegal drug harm. Our program is free of charge and designed for busy volunteer-led clubs, which can be completed online or with the support of a Good Sports team member. So tonight we will be talking about mental health, and this presentation does touch on topics that might be activating or distressing for some individuals. If you feel that you're being activated or finding yourself upset, please feel free to disconnect from the presentation. I am recording it so you can access it online, hopefully post, and come back to listen if you feel the need. And if you find yourself triggered at all, please contact your psychologist or Lifeline. So we'll start with a couple of definitions. The terms mental illness and mental health are often used interchangeably, but it's important to know that they're both different. In the course of a person's lifetime, not all people will experience a mental illness, but most people will face challenges with their mental health and wellbeing. Just like we all have challenges with our physical wellbeing from time to time. So a good way to look at it is that when we have a physical health issue, like the flu, we will talk to our friends about it. So consider why, when we have a mental health challenge, like feelings of anxiety or depression, that we feel that we shouldn't talk about it. Mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being in which every individual can realise his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Now, mental illness, on the other hand, is collectively all diagnosable mental disorders or health conditions that are characterised by alternations in thinking, mood or behaviour, or a combination thereof, and they're associated with distress or impaired in functioning. Mental illness is often successfully treated and managed by individuals and healthcare professionals. There are many different forms of mental illness. They have very different symptoms, different impacts on people's lives, and are treated and managed by individual and healthcare professionals in different ways. As an individual or a club, you're not qualified nor required to expected to be diagnosing or providing specific advice around mental illness. That's not your job. Your role as a club is to provide an environment and culture that supports mental health rather than identifies mental illness, and encourages help seeking and reduces stigma. So it's important to consider that just as someone who feels unwell may not have a serious mental illness, people may have poor mental health without mental illness. Just as it's possible to have poor mental health but no mental illness, it's entirely possible to have good mental health even with the diagnosis of a mental illness. This is because mental illnesses, like other health problems, are often episodic, meaning that there are times of ill health and that there are times of good health. So as we said before, mental illnesses can affect how a person thinks, feels, behaves, and interacts with others. And there's 5 most common mental illnesses in Australia, which are listed on the screen. And I am going to go through some basic definitions of these. But as I said before, it's important to remember that only qualified medical professionals can diagnose and provide treatment. And that's not the job of your sporting club. So the first one is anxiety disorders. So anxiety disorders afflict people with persistent excessive worry and can make it difficult to take pleasure in or cope with day-to-day life. People with anxiety disorders may also develop substance abuse problems. The next most common mental illness in Australia is clinical depression. So clinical depression is not a passing blue mood, but rather persistent feelings of sadness and worthlessness or a lack of desire to engage in formally pleasurable activities. Clinical depression is a complex mind and body illness, and depression can be treated with drugs and/or therapy. Then there's psychosis. Psychosis affects the mind where there has been some loss of contact with reality. When someone becomes ill in this way, it's called a psychotic episode. Psychosis can lead to changes in mood and thinking to abnormal ideas. Symptoms of psychosis can include delusions, hallucinations, and bizarre behaviour. The fourth item is substance abuse disorders, which are conditions in which the use of one or more substance leads to a clinically significant impairment or distress. Substance use disorders refer to the overuse of or the dependence of a drug, which leads to effects that are detrimental on an individual's physical and mental health or the welfare of others. While each drug can produce different physical effects, all abused substances share one thing in common. Repeated use can alter the way the brain looks and functions. And then the final most common mental illness in Australia is eating disorders. Any range of psychological disorders characterised by abnormal or disturbed eating habits come under eating disorders. An eating disorder is a serious mental illness characterised by eating, exercise, and body weight or shape becoming an unhealthy preoccupation of someone's life. Eating disorders, like other mental illnesses, are not a lifestyle choice. They're not a diet gone wrong or a cry for attention. Eating disorders can take many different forms and interfere with a person's day-to-day life. So 45% of Australians aged 16 to 85 will experience a mental illness at some stage in their lifetime. Leading into that, 1 in 4 Australians aged 16 to 24 will suffer from mental illness, which is an age group heavily represented in sporting clubs. So sporting clubs need to be aware of the key role that they play in prevention and supporting those individuals that have asked for help or that you think may be in need of help by referring them to local mental health agencies who can assist them professionally. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, suicide was the leading cause of death among young people aged 15 to 44 years of age in 2015, with the suicide rate for men 3 times higher than that for women. This is a concern because people with health issues may not know that they're suffering, and the longer that people delay getting help, the more difficult recovery can be. People with mental health problems are more likely to get help if someone close to them suggests it. So I thought that it'd be really important to also highlight what mental health might be looking like right now, considering the given circumstances. So a recent study by the ABC found that the number of Australians reporting poor mental health has more than doubled compared to that of a month ago. The number frequently feeling despair has more than tripled, and those frequently feeling confusion is up more than 5 times. Now, I do acknowledge that with the easing of restrictions, these stats may be a couple of weeks outdated, but it's still really important to consider that mental health is affected directly right now, and we should be checking in with our members and considering the role that our clubs can play in supporting them. So people with mental health issues may not always have the insight to know that they're suffering, and they may also be experiencing more than one mental health issue. As I said, the longer that people delay getting help, the more difficult recovery can be. So people with symptoms of mental ill health are more likely to get help if someone close to them suggests it. So there's a number of issues that most commonly concern young people surrounding mental illness. And these are things like coping with stress, school or study problems, body image, depression, bullying, and family conflict. And it's really important to consider the different types of things that are occurring in a 16 to 24-year-old's life that might increase the risk of developing symptoms of mental ill health. Things like going to high school, transitioning to moving out of home, moving into the workforce, taking on an extra load at university, or even just stress within a sporting club. So comorbidity is a really important thing to consider also, which comorbidity is the existence and interaction between multiple disorders, which are commonly mental illness and substance use, for example, alcohol and depression. Comorbidity of mental illness and substance use is high in Australia, with the most prevalent interactions being depression and alcohol, as well as anxiety and alcohol for both males and females. There's no single cause for the two conditions, and some people use substances to relieve the symptoms of their mental illness. For others, external factors can lead to changes in mental health and increased use of substances. People with co-occurring conditions are not all the same, and each person with a mental illness and substance use condition experiences a unique combination of symptoms and issues. Comorbidity is really important to consider in your sporting club, especially if you know that someone might be experiencing an issue with their mental health and you notice that they might be drinking a little bit more or using substances inappropriately. So it's really important as a club that you're considering role modelling positive behaviours and promoting healthy messaging when it comes to substance use and alcohol consumption. So there's many different forms of stigma in society, and some are based on negative attitudes or beliefs, and others are due to a lack of understanding or misinformation. Stigma does a range of different things and can have a range of different effects on mental health, and some of these are listed on the screen here. The first thing is that stigma can discourage help seeking. So many people are already reluctant to seek help because they don't understand what mental health symptoms mean or associate mental health issues with the negative and inaccurate stereotypes. Stigma can also negatively impact treatment outcomes. Mental well-being has a lot to do with staying active and engaged, living a contributing life, and feeling accepted as part of a community. Stigma can erode a person's self-confidence and make them shy away from engaging with others, fearing misunderstanding and ridicule. A recent study by the Mental Health Council of Australia found that 85% of Australians with mental health issues were worried about how people would view them unfavourably because of their mental health experience. Stigma also promotes discrimination. Fear and ignorance contributes to discrimination, making it harder for people to do things such as find work, a better place to live, or be accepted as a valued member of their community. The Mental Health Council of Australia study also found that 71% of people with a mental illness have been treated as less competent after revealing their mental illness to others. And finally, stigma can cause isolation. The fear of negative attitudes in the community, misunderstanding can cause people to withdraw from society, as well as being distressing. Social isolation, which is a low level of interaction with others, can make it harder for people to cope, reducing their likelihood of seeking support services. So SANE's Australia Research Bulletin, which is social inclusion and mental illness, found over half of their respondents did not feel that they were part of their local community. So as I said, stigma exists mainly because some people don't understand mental illness and also because some people have negative attitudes or beliefs towards it. Even some mental health professionals can have negative beliefs about the people that they care for. The media can also play a part in reinforcing stigma against people with mental illnesses by portraying mentally ill people with inaccurate stereotypes, by drawing on extreme examples, sensationalising situations through unwarranted references to mental illness, and using demeaning or hostile language. For example, if a person from the media associates mental illness with violence, this can promote the myth that all people with a mental illness are dangerous. In fact, research shows that people with mental illness are more likely to be victims rather than perpetrators of violence. So we're going to move into how clubs can create supportive environments. And I think that this might be a really great time just to stop and answer any questions that you might have had just around that education and information and the definitions. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them or type them in the chat section. If not, I'll continue to move on throughout the conversation. Perfect, I'll take that as you're all good and we will keep moving on. So now we're going to talk about creating supportive environments. So as a Good Sports Healthy Minds Club, we can aim to do three main things. The first thing being promote mental health. The second, work to reduce stigma. And the third, encourage help seeking. So what you do as a club matters, and it can help every individual. So there's a number of social and individual protective factors that are really positive things that sporting clubs should be considering when it comes to supporting mental health. Social protective factors include things like the presence of positive mentors and role models, such as coaches and committee members, support for development of skills and interests, opportunities to engage in community activities, a sense of belonging, positive social norms and attitudes, clear expectations of behaviour, and physical and psychological safety. And then the individual protective factors include things like positive physical development, academic achievement and intellectual development, high self-esteem, emotional self-regulation, good coping skills and problem solving, and engagement in connection to school, athletics, with peers, culture and religion. So how as a club can you support mental health? So for our mental health, we need a number of things, such as being able to express our feelings, maintain our physical health, monitor our alcohol and drug use, get quality sleep, spend time with friends and family, relax and enjoy hobbies, and set realistic goals to develop new skills. So there's a number of actions that you can take as a club to support those different things and activities. And I think it's really important to note that even right now when you're not operating, your club can still do these things in an online capacity or promote them in some way throughout social media or phone calls, etc. So for the first one, expressing your feelings, it's considering creating open, safe and supportive environments that encourage talking and work to reduce stigma. So doing this in a social distancing and an isolation capacity, and might be things like promoting mental health with your members, encouraging your club to check in with their members and their friends or their co-workers, etc. Having your coaches call your players and check in, all of those sorts of things. Maintaining physical health. So you might be posting online training sessions or coaching drills or challenges that people can do at home in their backyards, encouraging people to go for walks or runs where applicable, or even doing skills training within your local sporting code. The third thing, monitoring drug and alcohol use. So it's all about role modelling positive social norms, which is safe drinking and anti-drug taking. Good Sports have actually developed a promotional toolkit that clubs can utilise, which promotes messages such as safe drinking and anti-drug taking that you can use on your social media channel. So things like the Australian Drinking Guidelines or the benefits of saving money when drinking less at home, etc. And I'll be able to send that out post-webinar so the clubs can use it if they want on their social media channels or even via email or message, etc. The fourth item, getting enough quality sleep. So noticing if someone's tired all the time and asking them how they're sleeping. Maybe in a conversation with someone, they might mention that they're feeling tired or worn out. So a really important question to ask is if they're getting enough quality sleep. Quality sleep can impact mental health negatively, and it's something that people should be considering. And if they're not sleeping well, perhaps suggesting that they talk to a GP about that. Then spending time with friends and family. So obviously you'd love to come together as a club, and hopefully with the restrictions easing, your seasons might potentially be going ahead, or you can have some sort of social gathering in the near future. Things like club family days, social activities, etc., to create support networks and creating a sense of belonging. If for some reason that you feel that your club's not going to operate in the future and you are going to stick with online, then that's completely okay, and you can still do these things in a certain capacity. So you can host online Zoom catch up with your members, whether it be a Zoom trivia night or maybe a Zoom, table tennis competition or quizzes, dinner parties, etc. Even just check-ins, or just having phone catch ups in some capacity is a really great way of maintaining that social connection with your members. The next thing, relaxing and enjoying hobbies. So sport is a fantastic and healthy hobby, and it's really important to consider when does that hobby become toxic and how do you handle competition. So as a whole, maintaining the messaging that your club's promoting, whether that be positive and inclusive messaging, and also just considering encouraging people to love the sport and to not take it too seriously, as much as we all love to win a final every now and then. And then finally, setting realistic goals and developing new skills. So being able to create realistic goals as individuals and also as teams. So it might be that instead of your challenge being to win the season, that you're just aiming to win the next match. Possibly setting goals at home. So things like, I want everybody to try to shoot or kick 5 goals on video in a row and send it in to us, and we'll all, you know, relish in that joy. And that's a really great way of helping people to develop their skills and feeling encouraged to achieve them. So like I said, you can do these in an online capacity as well. Please don't feel like just because, you know, you're not allowed to catch up in person, or you don't have the resources to be able to catch up in person, that you can't do anything. And Good Sports is definitely here to support you to be able to implement these activities or give you other suggestions of things that you can do. So as a Good Sports Healthy Minds Club, it is a whole of club journey, and we do touch on a range of different things. So things like empowering people to become talkers, encouraging the club to connect with others, and local service providers comes under that as well. Encouraging your committee members and coaches to become educated and get informed around mental health, implementing policy, working to raise awareness around stigma, and also promoting help seeking. So when discussing perceptions, beliefs and attitudes about mental health and wellbeing in your club, it's really important to consider your audience. It might not be an appropriate discussion to have with the whole player base, and it might be better addressed in ongoing discussions between senior leaders that highlight and are responsive to different kinds of stigma that they witness or are told about in your club. So if you can see stigma, you can change it. It can be a really tricky subject to address, and it's really important to consider the conversation that you're having. So for example, you might be at a training night and you might hear a really stigmatizing comment made by one of the players in your team. So it's really important to consider, if you were to call out the comment then and there, what sort of response you'd have from your playing team and from that individual, or if it would be better had to have a conversation with that individual post-training session and just say, hi, I'm not sure if you're aware, you made a really stigmatizing comment. This is potentially something you could say in the future, instead of framing it that way, and educating them in that sense. If you feel that it's a great opportunity to educate the whole player base, then feel free to do that, but just really consider your approach. But definitely if you notice something stigmatizing or a comment's made, it's something to talk about. And if you don't know how to approach the situation, take it back to your committee or take it back to another trained member and ask them how they would address that. And then in the future, you know to be prepared for that conversation. So how can you get educated and increase your knowledge within your club? So there's a number of different things that you can do as an individual, as a club, and as a committee or coach to get educated around mental health and increase your knowledge. It's not a race, and you don't need to be the first person to finish. Any education is really important and really useful. So whether it be that you've done 1 activity or you've done 5 activities, that's a really great step in the right direction. So things that you can do might be committing your club to the Good Sports Healthy Minds program, getting online and getting educated about mental health, ordering educational booklets and information pamphlets from organisations such as Beyond Blue or Headspace. Good Sports do put orders through for Beyond Blue resources for clubs if anyone wants to utilise that. Inviting specialists to come and talk to your club about mental health, and maybe that be to your coaches or committee or your leadership. And then also bringing in representatives from reputable mental health organisations and getting them to chat to your players. For example, Speak Up, Stay Chatty. So I've listed a number of online mental health courses that you might like to have a look at. They are short courses and they are all free of charge. And I'll send out the links to them post the webinar also, so that you can jump on and have a look at them if you feel that you might like to complete them or promote them with your players to complete, or your coaches or fellow community members. The first of these is the Mind Strength program. So Mind Strength have short interactive modules which are aimed at increasing understanding of resilience and developing useful resilience building strategies. We then have the This Way Up mental wellbeing courses. So they've got a few short courses covering different topics such as mindfulness, coping with stress, managing insomnia, and student wellbeing. And then finally, there's the Tackle Your Feelings, which is a course through AFL, and that's a new mental health training program for local football clubs and coaches, which is aimed at improving clubs' understanding of awareness of mental health and enhancing the individual experience of players, their families, and the broader community. I will say, really, like, it is aimed at football clubs, but if you're not a football club, you can still register to complete it. There's no qualifying, material to be able to get in, so you can just make an account and list other through that. So if you feel that that might be something that you want to check out, feel free to check the link out as well. And there are plenty of other online courses that you can do, whether they be paid courses or free courses, but these are the ones that I found that were the most accessible, simple and easy to understand. So what sort of things can you do as an individual? Make occasional behaviour everyday behaviour. So tell people what they do well. We spend a lot of time in our life being told where we need to improve on things, which can really negatively impact our mental well-being. So as many people see their negative characteristics much more important than their positive ones, it's really nice to remind them of their positive ones. Let people know that they're valued. Letting people know the positive contributions that they're making to the club, the community, or to you as an individual. Listen like you mean it. So I always say, listen to understand, don't listen to reply. So take the time to listen and process what the person's talking about, listen to how they're feeling, really resonate with that, and be comfortable with the silence also. I think creating that communication channel and being comfortable with silence and giving a person a chance to get everything out really can enhance the way of your understanding and make a really valuable conversation. So rather than listening to something and considering what you're going to say and reply before the person finishes talking, just sit and process what they're talking about. And then once they've finished talking, think about how you might like to respond to that. And then finally, check in often. So don't wait for a reason to ask people how they're going. Just ask them. So even if you just say, hey mate, it's been a while since we spoke, how are you going? You might say, how do you feel after training last week? How do you feel about last week's activity or online Zoom catch up? How is school or university going? How's your family? Or just, are you okay? Checking in is really important, and that's a really great way of making people feel like they belong and that they're a member of your community. Promote help seeking is the next thing. So you can influence change by promoting mental health and promoting help seeking. So utilizing social media is a really great tool of promoting mental health and help seeking. And we have a number of different posters that you can put up in your club rooms, which we've converted to online. So you can post them on social media, as well as we have some dedicated mental health social media posts that you can use to promote mental health to your members. The next thing being promoting online educational material. So it might be the online courses. With Beyond Blue have got many PDF information pamphlets that you might like to post links to online if you can't hand them out in a physical capacity, or even mailing them some if you find that relevant. Promoting help seeking in your regular conversations. So you might be talking to someone and, like I said, they might say that they're tired. So you might say, have you been getting enough sleep? Maybe you need to try sleeping in, or you might need to try going to bed earlier, or chatting to GP about it. That's promoting help seeking in itself. Promoting self-care is really important. And then working to create a help seeking culture. So reducing stigma, normalizing mental health, and normalizing conversations around mental health and promoting those help seeking strategies is a really great way. So becoming talkers and role modeling healthy minds behaviours. There's a number of different things that go into becoming talkers and talking about mental health, as well as having a mental health conversation. So the first of those is being available and being interested. So making sure that people know that they can approach you, or they can approach their coach or their friends, or etc., to talk about mental health. So open up the communication channels. Let them be known to people that you are there to have that conversation, and let them know that you're interested in having that conversation. So something that I often say too is that you might be at a training night and you might be packing away the ball bag or putting stuff away in the cupboard, etc. And someone might come up to you and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk? And you'll say, yep, I'm really busy. You've got to come with me so I can get this done. Are you really listening? Are you really giving them your time? Are you interested in their conversation? Something to consider. If you can see that they're distressed or they might be off or upset, maybe take the time to just set aside the balls. I can give you 5 minutes of undivided attention. Your conversation is really important to me. I want to know how you're feeling. It can be a really powerful way of letting people know that you are there and you are committed to supporting them. The second thing, becoming a talented listener. So again, as I said, listening to understand, not listening to reply. Knowing that you don't have to have the answers. Like we said at the start, you're not a mental health professional. Your job's not to diagnose, your job's not to treat. And just because you're opening up that conversation, it doesn't mean that you need to have the answers and you need to be the person that fixes everything. It's really important to acknowledge that that your role is just to be supporting the people to find the right answers together. So letting them know that they're not alone in the journey, and it's okay to say that you don't know what to say, but you're going to be there to support them to find that answer. Talking about your own feelings can be a really great way of opening up those communication channels and making people feel more comfortable to talk about that. So it might be that you notice that someone's really upset, and you might go up to them and say, hey, how's your day going? And they say, oh, you know, a bit average. And you might say, look, you know what, I had a pretty shit day last week, and this is what I did, or this is what happened. Letting them know that you're human too, you have feelings as well, and that you're really interested in knowing how they're feeling. Often if people can relate to you, they might be more willing to share what's going on, and they might say, you know what, I had a shit day too, this is what's going on, I might take your suggestions, and just letting them, you know, get that out of what's going on. And then again, checking in often. So remembering to check in with people, ask them if they're okay, ask them how they're feeling, you know, just really important in that sense. So we do have a conversations poster, which you can see a mini snapshot of on the screen here. And this was developed in conjunction with Speak Up, Stay Chatty, who are a mental health organisation here in Tasmania. And it's basically just a brief outline of how to have a conversation around mental health if you feel that you haven't had one before, or you might not know what questions to ask. And essentially there's 4 key components to having a conversation around mental health. So the first component is asking. So starting the conversation, opening up that conversation channel and giving the person a chance to talk about what might be going on. So how are you? You seem off your game. I noticed you're upset. Is everything okay? Etc. So starting that conversation. And the second part is understanding. So asking open, empathetic questions to gain an understanding of what's going on. So what's making you feel this way? Tell me more about the situation, etc. Just to give them a chance to elaborate a bit more and to dive a bit deeper into it. And the third part is referring. So again, you're not the professional, you're not the person that's going to solve everything, you're not the person that's going to treat them potentially. So it's really important to know what services are available that you can refer people to. So it might be that they need to go and see their GP, they might just need to talk to their friends or their parents, or they might not even need to go to anyone. But it's really important to consider that. So just knowing how to support them and where to refer them to is a really powerful tool. And we will go into support services in a little bit. And then finally, checking in again. So it might be a week's time, they might come to training again. You might see them pop up in your active online on Facebook. Send them a message. How are you going since we last spoke? Maybe if they went to the doctor, how did the GP go? You have that conversation. Did you get extra sleep last night? How did you feel now? Really important to just check in and remind that person that you are there, you're committed to supporting them, and you're willing to be there for that. So what if someone comes to you with a problem that you can't solve? It's okay to not have the answers. Be prepared. So be able to access local supports, have the numbers of the local support services available to share with that member. And this will guide you how to advise individuals of the most appropriate community-based and national services where they can go for further help and treatment. And then be safe. So also recognise, as I said, you're not a mental health professional, so you shouldn't be giving specific medical advice to individuals. You can still be supportive and caring without doing this. You should also be made aware that the services that you can refer that person to are also services that you can access as an individual to provide you support. If you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling distressed or saddened about something that you've heard, please reach out and get yourself that help as well, because it's definitely available to you. And also be aware that you should be considering privacy, confidentiality and discreet behaviour when it comes to responding to mental health situations within your club or even your friendship base or just individually. So being connected. So consulting and collaborating with individuals and facilities and services can be built into your mental health and wellbeing plan. This will ensure that your club is recommending services that are appropriate to your community. It's a great chance for your club to become respected and more connected with your local community. So by doing this, it's building strong networks and relationships with service providers in your community, identifying key contacts and getting the phone numbers, etc. And these people might include your local GP, counsellors, psychologists, family planning services, social services, and maternal health services. Building relationships with these services finding out how they might be able to support members of your club if they need it, what numbers you should be giving your club members, maybe what the operating hours are, or even inviting them in to chat with your committee or your club in general about the services that they provide is a really great way of building those relationships. So should you have that difficult conversation, should you not know where to refer someone, you can pick up your mental health and wellbeing policy, or you can remember the conversation that you had at the club last week and you can say, look, I think that this service would be a really great place for you to go. It might be that you have a conversation with the GP and you build a relationship with the doctor service that any club members can ring up and book, or the club can ring up and book for club members appointments if they need them. So they're just some suggestions there. We then have online support, definitely everywhere, accessible to all Australians. And there's a number of different numbers on the screen and support services here that you might like to know. And I will be sending these out post the webinar so that you can have a referral to them. But there's services such as Drug Info. Drug Info is a service, phone and email line provided through the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, who run the Good Sports program. And they provide confidential, non-judgmental alcohol and other drug telephone and email information and referrals. We then have the Beyond Blue, who provide mental wellbeing and support services. Beyond Blue also have a really great website which provides lots of different informational pamphlets and handouts, etc., that individuals can access. Next we have, sorry guys, come out, the joys of working from home. Next we have Lifeline, who provide access to a 24-hour crisis support and suicide prevention services available to all Australians. Lifeline also have a texting service, so if you're feeling like you know an individual or you yourself might not feel comfortable in phoning, you can also utilise that texting service, which is available for some hours during the night time, and you can talk to a health professional in that sense via just text messages. Then there's Men's Line. Men's Line provide free help, support, referrals and counselling for men. Headspace, who provide information and support for young people, their parents and carers. And then finally, the Kids Helpline, who provide telephone and online counselling services specifically for young people aged between 5 and 25. So as you can see, there's a number of different services available. This is not all of them. There is an abundance of them online. All you have to do is Google mental health support, depression, anxiety, etc., and you can find them. But these are definitely the most reputable and accessible that we recommend. So then there's also a number of apps that you can download, or you can recommend your players or members or committees to download around specifically mental health. All of these apps have been reviewed by the appropriate mental health services, and these are the ones that I found that were the most accessible and simple and easy to understand. So the first app is the check-in. So the check-in is for people to be able to plan a conversation around mental health with an individual. You can set in there the questions that you're going to ask, how you're going to frame the conversation, etc. So similar to the conversations poster. So it can be a really great way of just outlining that conversation, practicing it, and you can even go back in there after the conversation and write in how it went, what you might do differently next time, etc. If that's something that you're interested in. And then there's Mood Mission. So the Mood Mission app is all about learning new or better ways of coping with your low moods and anxiety. So you can tell Mood Mission how you're feeling, and it will give you a list of suggested activities that you can do to relieve those feelings or relieve that anxiety. So they're activities and mental health strategies that are quick, easily achievable and backed up by scientific evidence. There's then the One Giant Mind app. So One Giant Mind is an app for people that want to feel less stressed, calmer and more present and experience greater health and well-being. So they have a 12-step beginner experience to the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. So I'll guide you through that. Then there's also the Smiling Mind app. So Smiling Mind app was developed specifically for young people, and it's been developed by a team of psychologists which uses mindfulness to boost and improve calmness, contentment and clarity. So again, it's meditation which is shown to help manage stress, resilience, anxiety, depression and improving general and mental health and well-being. There's then the Combined Minds app. So the Combined Minds app is for families and friends of people who are experiencing mental illnesses, being able to provide them the right environment to help the individuals who are suffering be supported by that changes. So it's really important to consider that as influencers in the lives of young people, that you should be providing positive impacts on people's mental health. So this one's about for people supporting mental health. got really great resources in having conversations, environments to consider, etc. And then there's the Clear Fear app. So Clear Fear was developed clinically in collaboration with young people, and it uses cognitive behavioural framework to help people change their anxious thoughts and emotions and alter anxious behaviours for calmer responses. So they're just some apps that you can have a look at. Consider downloading yourself or recommending members to download if they're more tech savvy or they feel that that's appropriate for them. Again, I will send out this list post-webinar so that you can access it. So that brings me to the end of the core presentation. And there's a few key next steps that we think that clubs should consider doing, whether it be right now or in the future if you feel that your capacity does increase. The first of those steps being having a relationship with your Good Sports relationship manager. So organising a meeting, maybe either it be one-on-one, like a phone conversation, or phoning into a Zoom meeting with the committee or anything like that to talk about Good Sports as a whole, talk about your club's relationship with us, and to also talk about mental health and the different activities that you can do as a club to support mental health your members, what extra support you might need, etc. Then promoting help seeking to your members. So utilising social media to promote help seeking. I will be sending out the social media posts and the promotional toolkits on Good Sports' behalf, but you can also do things like search up the social media accounts of other mental health organisations such as Beyond Blue, Speak Up, Stay Chatty, Lifeline, etc. And you can share their content directly onto your club's social media page, and that in itself is promoting mental health messaging. And then thirdly, to consider implementing a mental health and wellbeing policy at your club. Good Sports do have a template of a policy that your club can use, and you can build on this. You can put in there the work that you're going to do with local community providers or any other mental health initiatives that as a club you might be doing. So it is really a baseline, and it's a really great way of starting to promote the commitment of mental health to your members. So they're the 3 activities that I think are a really great base to start off. I will open up now for any questions or conversations that people want to have.